All right, so here we are. Of Alex Edelman, the CEO and founder of Lolli. Alex, I'm excited to dive in with you today and explore some topics.
Yeah, me too. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, let's just pave the foundation here. Do you want to just give me a little background on what were the market dynamics that led you to believe that Lolli is a business worth dedicating at least a few years of your life to, and what Lolly is doing currently?
Yeah, so where the problem really arose is that I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. Even today, it's still too difficult to get into crypto. I think you have to take your hard-earned money and you have to invest in it, and I think that's a lot for the majority of the population that doesn't really have that mindset, doesn't think like that. So what our goal was is to make Bitcoin not just more accessible and to get more of it for people who have crypto, but also to introduce crypto to a whole new realm of people and do our part in bringing Bitcoin and bringing crypto to the next 100 million people in the world.
Yeah, and so what's the tactic to do that? Like, how does it get if you go a level more granular on that? What's the implementation?
So what we've done is we've created the easiest way for people to earn through shopping. We
Hmm.
work with over 1,000 different merchants that give us merchant funded offers. So a user can earn Bitcoin back at Nike and Adidas and Best Buy, places that they're used to shopping. And when they shop using Lolly, they get Bitcoin back for their purchases. So we're taking this existing cashback rewards model, and we're saying, people want to earn Bitcoin over cash. People want to set up a Bitcoin wallet, and we can make that happen in a very low to no friction way.
Yeah. Let me ask you: is this a U.S. psychological expectation when they spend money to get cash back because we're so heavily dependent on credit cards, or is it? Do you see this pervasive across other major Western companies or the world, or how does it get? How does it distributed?
Yeah, right now we're U.S. focused, but in our experience with our previous company, we did a lot of cross border, a lot of international, and this cashback is international, right? Like
Yeah.
everybody wants free money, everyone wants cash back, everyone wants coupons and savings and deals, and so yeah, it is a universal product at its core. Right now, it's U.S. only, just because of being a startup and you can only tackle one thing at a time and do it well. So a lot of our focus is to hone the model, build these strong partnerships, and then take these brands that are international that can give us rates offers all across the world. So over the next year, you'll be seeing us expand pretty rapidly internationally to really meet a lot of that international demand that we're seeing already.
That's cool. That's cool. And what was the last business you were working on?
Yeah, so my,
Cosmic?
my team and I, yeah, my team and I, we started a company about 10 years ago called Cosmic. And Cosmic was the creator of the modern buy button. We created this technology that let merchants sell their products anywhere and consumers buy anywhere. We were a yeah, we worked with a lot of major merchants, made merchants a lot of money over the years, and we ended up getting acquired by our biggest customer, which was Pop Sugar, to come and empower over $1 billion in retail revenue. And then we got acquired again after growing about 10x post first acquisition. We got acquired by a company called Ebates, which is now known as Rakuten, and that is the biggest cashback rewards company in the U.S. and many parts of the world. So we really got to we knew a lot about the cashback business model because we were powering or trying to power a lot of them, and then once we were there, we were sort of inside the belly of the beast and got to understand that world and make merchants even more money, and meet a lot more merchants through that. So that really
Yeah.
inspired us to say, hey, look, this is a very difficult business to run domestically and with fiat constraints, and it's actually could be made more efficient when you introduce cryptocurrency. In addition to that, people want Bitcoin, when people want crypto, and they want it more easily. So uh, taking all these different things that we learned over the years, having gotten into Bitcoin in 2013 as a team, and then later, getting into cashback rewards in like 2016, 2017, and really understanding the space, we merged and married these two ideas.
Hmm. When you mentioned the team, how many people did you work with at Cosmic and then stay on with at Rakuten? Did you stay on with the companies that were acquired that
We
acquired
did,
Cosmic?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did. So yeah, my CTO co-founder of Lolli was also my CTO co-founder of Cosmic, and
Mhm.
about 10 of us out of 21 full-time worked together with our last company. So we very much have been working together for a long time, trust each other, and gotten the band back together for this
Oh,
uh,
nice.
this this new venture, new-ish
Nice,
venture.
nice. Hey, where did you guys all meet? Was it you're in New York now? Was it a New York funded and you just met people locally there, or were you somewhere else previously?
No, I was born and raised in North Carolina, and that's where we started.
Mhm.
So um, yeah, I met Matt, my co-founder, on Google Plus of all places. We were in like, yeah, if you remember Google Plus, dating me a little bit, but yeah, we were both on Google Plus. We were two of the only ones that were in like the, I think, Java engineering circles, and then technology circles and stuff like that. If you remember the concept of a circle with Google Plus, but yeah, we ended up um, uh, joining forces with Cosmic, and he came in and just built everything and did an incredible job. And we've been working together for about 10 years ever since.
Yeah. Well, how did you even get interested in this field? I ask. I mean, my first company was a payments startup. We built
Hmm.
an equivalent to a competitor to Square before Square was around. Really, the
Oh,
early days
cool.
of Square. And it was, I met a guy in a co-working space in Los Angeles. It was 2012. It was the only co-working space in LA that I knew of in tech. And he was like doing these trade shows where he would go to different events and he was the IT guy. And he's like, oh, they have no way to manage the payments between different shows. So we built this iPad payment system. And I always ask because it's like people's entry to payments seems sometimes so random or so rarely do I meet somebody who's like, yeah, I studied finance and I knew I wanted to get into payment tech and they just what was your how did you fall into it?
Yeah, great question. I've been moving money around the internet since I was like 16. I like in a variety of ways. I was like hiring a lot of people when I was 16 to go build websites and platforms. I very quickly realized I got my start programming, but I actually never really liked it. I did it because I liked it, to build the end product, and I like to solve problems, but I didn't really like love programming. And the more engineers I worked with, the more I realized that some people love programming, some people don't. I more like the design, the product, the business side of things, and then the programming was like a means to actually like solve the problem. But I quickly started hiring engineers all over the world. I was hiring anywhere from like North Carolina to Virginia to Ukraine to Bangladesh. And when I started to move money around, I started getting kicked off PayPal and
Mm.
flagged by my bank. And then I started to do the math, and I was like, by the time that the money got from me to the person that I was working with in different areas of the world, that money was then like worth 30% of what I sent them. So or 70% of what I sent them. So I started to learn a lot about like what happens to money when you move it, and how hyper inefficient um, fiat currencies are when you look at when you're working on it with global citizens, global workforce. And the internet is naturally, there really aren't a lot of barriers unless the barriers are instituted by the countries or the nations that are enforcing certain barriers to exist. But when you look purely at the internet, like, I can communicate with somebody in Bangladesh the same way that I'm communicating with you. So there aren't really too many natural barriers with the internet, and thus there's never really been or the surprising thing is there's never really been an internet native currency until Bitcoin emerged that really had this true decentralized nature to it. So when I first got started, I was kind of like concepting. I was like, why can't I move money all around the internet? Why does and I think a lot of people that are internet native or are get their start at a young age on the internet, it actually, fiat currencies and transaction fees and all the middlemen actually make way less sense than when you are when you sort of are in like the fiat world. So I actually feel like my fiat brain was killed a long time ago, and my internet brain emerged at a very young age, where it just like made no sense why it's paying all these fees. So fast forward a little bit, I ended up, I was like in college and I was studying microfinance and one of the economics more specifically. And one of the things that fascinated me was what Muhammad Yunus was doing with the Grameen Bank. He was giving the poorest women in these different areas in Bangladesh a cell phone. And he saw this sort of trickle up economics that would occur when you give somebody something, technology, access to commerce, access to communication. And when you give someone those three things, the sort of trickle up economics that occur, the poorest woman would help the people around them, the family, the friends, and then she would then enact commerce with people in different villages. So it got my wheels turning where I was like, what does that look like with payments? What does that look like with giving people access to more seamless payments, more seamless commerce to buy and sell anywhere? And that's when I really started a concept with this idea around Cosmic, which was my last company, to sort of solve that problem. And that was in 2011. And then 2013 comes around, and I'm like a poor bootstrap startup founder crashing on couches in New York, and I was at some random bar, and this guy starts telling me about Bitcoin, and I'm like, oh my god, this is the future. This is like everything that I had sought out to build with Cosmic was native to this currency. Woe was me. What was I? How small was I thinking to think I could create on this like centralized platform that like didn't look too dissimilar from the Shopify's and the Squares of the world, similar to kind of how you were thinking. And how much greater could we think, how much bigger could we think if we're building on top of this decentralized currency that connects 4 billion people with an internet connection? So that was like the mind-blowing moment for me, where it just like made total sense. I could move money to Ukrainian engineers, Bangladeshi engineers, and they could take the exact same, one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin, 100 Satoshis is 100 Satoshis, and I could then move that money anywhere in the world. And sure, like it's going to be volatile, especially in the early days, but at least what I recognize as money being like one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin is the same for what they recognize as money. And when you zoom out a little bit and you're moving money into highly volatile or hyperinflationary or inflationary, monies, that volatility isn't as great as you think it is with the fiat U.S. dollar mindset. And Bitcoin is actually way less volatile when you look at it in relation to other countries that don't necessarily have the strength of the monetary policy that the U.S. government does. So yeah, I kind of like feel like I'm a symptom or my brain is a symptom of creation of like a lot of different things, and sort of this kaleidoscopic view of the world that like an internet native citizen can kind of like look at. So yeah, that's
Yeah,
kind of how I
yeah,
came to believe in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency as a whole.
that's awesome. Yeah, great story. When you were studying finance and economics in school, did you have a sort of a leaning coming out of that experience? Did you lean towards, say, like philosophically on how governments should impart their power on currency? Do you say, let's paint the spectrum as being government should play no role and they should let people do what they want? Let's keep the domain to the internet and currency. To the government should play a role and they should be very concerned and they should enact rules. And right now this is topical because I'm sure you saw the Coinbase CEO tweet about the SEC, and we're in now September 2021, and it feels like the government is, at least in the U.S., coming online. They want to do something. They're threatening the crypto companies. Like Coinbase is certainly a leader in the U.S., one of the leading crypto companies, and we don't know quite. I mean, the outcome of that seems pretty unclear. Where do you sort of stand on the spectrum of government's role throughout all of this?
Yeah, hard hitting question. So it's I like it. I actually I try to stay I think I have unique politics, and I think my politics, if they were trying to be interpreted into like, it would kind of break some people's like mindset, because I think a lot of people like to bucket into saying I'm a libertarian, I'm a liberal, I'm a conservative, and I very much have my own beliefs that I think are um like I would say my beliefs are like 10 years, 20 years in the future, that not trying to like toot my own horn or anything, but I don't think that the beliefs that I have exist today in sort of like a label. And if you were to take
Hmm.
different pieces, it would actually look, some of my beliefs are very um, socially minded, and some of my beliefs are more free market minded. And I think those beliefs don't exist today because there's not politicians that are as advanced as like entrepreneurs or founders that are like looking in the future of like what is a better world. I think government is hyper inefficient. I think that government is like one of the worst performing organizations in the world if you were to just look at it as that. And so in many ways, I believe in free markets where it's like the best product should always win and let me do whatever I want to do. And the best product will win. The consumers will pick the best product. But then in other ways, I think that we have to look out for everybody, and we aren't all as fortunate to be in the positions we are with like education, with access to great education, access to resources. And I don't believe necessarily from day one that we are given the same, affordances. So, in that sense, I love paying taxes, to be perfectly honest. And I think that's a little bit contrarian with sort of the libertarian beliefs that a lot of Bitcoiners share. So I personally, I love paying taxes. I'm happy paying taxes. I love being American. I love being, I feel so lucky to have been born in the United States. And I'm like, sure, it's like I hate the inefficiencies of the government, and a lot of taxes go towards government, but a lot of taxes also go to private institutions to fund, innovation. So I kind of have this like unique belief. I think unique, and I don't find too many people that have both those sort of things where we have to look out for all citizens. We have to be socially minded. We have to give back. We have to protect everybody. I believe in everyone should have access to healthcare. But then also at the same time, we need to push innovation. We need free markets. We need this ability to actually like serve the private sector because I'm not working for free, and I'm not building a company as big as I can because it's like I'm paying 90% taxes. So there's a balance there of like giving me the incentive to build the future that I want to live in, that I want my kids and my grandkids to live in, giving me the incentive to go do that, enabling me as an entrepreneur to go build a company and compete with the Apples, the Googles, the Facebooks of the world, so that we don't live in this like monopoly or oligopoly. Give me the ability as a small business owner and an innovator to build innovative technology and not build into these like anti-competitive oligopolies. So I think that there's this like beautiful balance that sort of naturally comes from a free market where like the government is a competitor while at the same time being complementary to my growth. There's things I can't do unless I have government intervention, and there's things that inhibit me. Like there's things that I'm like where I have handcuffs where I know that an Estonian entrepreneur has a better a more of an advantage to go build certain products, especially in Web3, that I have. And that when I look at when I talk to government officials, I'm like, look at what you're doing to me to not let me innovate on a global scale. And if you don't let me do the certain things that I need to do to compete with the entire world, the US is going to get left behind because the best entrepreneurs are going to get left behind because I literally am not legally able to build certain things that people in a global spectrum are able to build. So I think yeah I don't know if there
Yeah.
is a term for those beliefs, but feel free to.
Yeah,
I'd
yeah,
love to hear
yeah.
your thoughts on that front.
I almost I didn't hear too much there. That was contrarian from what I think a moderate rational view is on, say, if you just take fiscal policy. We're certainly taking care of all the people in society, all certainly encompassing those that are struggling financially, those that don't have enough to pay for basic means of living. That's got to be a priority, because if that's not met, then the system is at risk for flipping. Those people tend to just say, "Hey, this is not a game worth playing. Therefore, I'm just going to riot. I'm going to, screw up the game for everyone." So logically, I think that's pretty. You can quite easily make that argument. On the flip side, free markets have to exist. Incentives, I think you said it a certain way where I view it as the inverse of that, where it's not that the government gives you any incentive. The government agrees to not get in the way of your incentive. You're already incentivized. You want to be appreciated by people around you. You want to contribute to other people's lives, and thus you want them to contribute to your life. And we each kind of agree to go down our silos. Like you've spent, a lot of your life focusing on like a really like pinpointed. If you take the total economy, like you're in the like the cashback category of Bitcoin and how payments intersect with that in large merchants, and then somebody else is going to be they're going to be an artist and they're going to be spending 10 hours a day drawing, and you're going to benefit from that at some point. So I think that the government, to me, has a grip on the global currency today. Let's take the US government, and that comes with tremendous power. And as citizens of this country, we've benefited from that leverage, that power. The US largely exports as an export currency. The US dollar is traded in most countries, and the US doesn't want to lose that grip, that power, because when it does, and when it gets superseded by blockchain technology and cryptocurrencies, then the US dollar starts to become less relevant. And while that's good for us as a global community, that we're using a super hyper efficient currency that we all recognize and is very secure, it it certainly detracts from the power that the US dollar has. So I think what I observe what's currently happening is the US government says, hey, we want to remain powerful. In fact, we'd like to even be more powerful if that's possible. But we certainly don't want to drastically and quickly lose our power. Cryptocurrency, I'm frankly quite impressed that the government has taken the approach of let's wait and see. I think it's quite fresh. Like, we're 2021. They took that philosophy under Bill Clinton with the internet and largely said we're going to remain, pretty. We're going to take the back seat and just let whatever happens on the internet happen, and then we'll react to that as opposed to being proactive. And I think that philosophy has taken place in crypto, but we're starting to see like the grip happening because it's working. Like, it's really blockchain technology and crypto are superseding the dollar in many ways, and I think that slip is going to start to happen. And I think it plays out with the government's ability to um, impact the day-to-day life of its citizens by giving free money to people. Like, we printed out how many trillions of dollars in the last couple of years and just gave it out to people. Like, that power comes with a downside. Doing that diminishes the power of the dollar for other people across the world, because everyone else just paid the price of inflation once all that money was printed to give it to US citizens. So I think it's like there's like a double-edged sword here. It's like you can do something that benefits your own citizens, you can play that trump card, but it's going to come at a price delayed down the road. One point that somebody brought up to me on a podcast a couple episodes ago that I've been ruminating about is the government implicitly engages with you and me in a financial relationship with the understanding that if you go out of business and declare bankruptcy, then the government's going to recognize that insolvency, that bankruptcy, and provide a social safety net, a financial social safety net. And when the government says, hey, we're not going to allow people to make investment decisions and investments if you don't have $1 million in net worth or 200,000 in income, if you're not an accredited investor. For the longest time, I've been very against that. I think that people should be able to make their own financial decisions. But somebody brought up, it was a hedge fund manager. He's like, look, if the government has a relationship with you financially, then they're going to have the right and the power to introduce certain rules. So I think about that, and whether the future is inevitably the government not having a financial relationship with citizens, and whether it's just a matter of time before that happens. And the US is just going to decide whether we're going to make it more painful or less painful as we go down that road. Again, I'm also just kind of rambling here, but I'm curious of that, if anything stuck out to you.
Yeah, I mostly lean towards like free market on that front. I think you have I've devoted my life to like democratizing access to financial tools, to payments, to that. And I didn't grow up with money, like we middle class, and I I look at myself as like self-made, but at the same time, I had access to a great education. I I was able to get to where I'm at. But at the same time, not everybody has that, and I think that the I love the quote where it's just like opportunity. What is it? It's like access. What I'm blanking on the quote.
I'm trying
It's
to.
like Opportunity is not. I'm looking it up. Basically, it's like it's this principle that like everybody can, it can be born in anything, but not everybody has the same opportunity. So a lot of what
Mm,
I'm trying to create in the private sector is giving everyone access to that opportunity. So I do think that like we should break some of those break some of those rules that we have in place to let everybody be able to invest in companies. It's like, who's the government to say what's risky or what's not?
mm,
Like crypto is a great example of that. There have been people who have identified this trend because 4 billion people with internet connection have had access to it and have emerged out of poverty because they saw this mimetic trend occur. They were like, of course, there's this sound monetary policy that is Bitcoin. And of course, there's only 21 million of there's a scarcity principle of it. And like, I want to invest in that. I think it's a great example of people who have gotten into it. And, you could look on the other side and say, people shouldn't be able to invest in shit coins. It's like, I don't know. It's
yeah,
like free market kind of playing out.
yeah,
Where if you don't do your diligence and you don't learn it, it's up to you. So
yeah,
I get the argument where the government should protect its citizens, but I don't know if that's the way it should protect its citizens in the same way. But there's a lot of gray area, and I almost sympathize with the policymakers of like how hard that is. It's like, what is risky anymore? Like, are like pretty much liquid assets, liquid equity is like semi-liquid equity is a pretty great asset, like over time, right? Like, startups are risky. Maybe should be like a lower threshold, but not a complete, threshold for everyone to invest in everything. But liquid assets have been pretty successful so far
yeah,
like on the grand scheme of things, in the grand
yeah,
scheme of things, grand scheme of
yeah,
things. Like I think Robinhood and like access to stocks, like that wasn't always very accessible, but Robinhood made stocks accessible to many people, and you don't have to really be an accredited investor to invest in the public market. So almost maybe it is opening up that criteria for what a for the public markets. But I don't think that the government does the worst job. But they could always do a better job.
yeah, yeah. And I almost think a better job is doing less. Like I see a
Yeah,
lot of it's like how many times you go to a crypto site, trading site, marketplace, DeFi, and they're like, oh, sorry, we can't serve this state or the entire United States because of some
yeah,
rule. And oftentimes it's just vague, and the company is not willing to take on the risk. And it's like, look, we're not the only. I'm not certainly hammering the U.S. China certainly seemed pretty, at least they were not discriminately against Bitcoin, and then they came out and said, "Hey, you can't do any mining," and it just overnight the entire everyone imagine just investing your life savings or taking out a loan, starting a mining company in China, and it's like, oh, you gotta up and leave right away. So it's
yeah.
yeah, there's certainly a tension.
Well, the great thing about Bitcoin is it did relatively little. Like it affected things very little. Like even though a lot of the miners were in China, it was like Bitcoin. I mean, didn't really take that big of a hit. So I think Bitcoin's pretty resilient to government intervention. It's pretty independent, and it's shown that over time. That how many times has India banned it, China banned it, or rules around it, and then I don't really think that the U.S. will ever ban it. I think we'd have like an uproar at this point if the government said, kind of went back to like saying, oh, you can't own gold, or like they
Yeah,
took the precedent that Bitcoin is
yeah,
property. So imagine the government coming in and seizing property. I mean the
yeah,
it would set a pretty scary precedent. And I think like I don't really have a lot of faith in a lot of our politicians. A lot of them are like um, technologically illiterate, and when you see them, arguing for something or against something, and they don't even know this industry that we're in. Granted, like it's there's a lot going on. It's like we have people that are we have people that have no clue what they're talking about.
yeah,
That said, if they have no clue what they're talking about, that like one of the only things I've ever agreed with Ted Cruz on is he came out and it was like he like challenged every politician. He was like, if anyone knows what you're talking about, please explain blockchain, explain Bitcoin, explain decentralization, explain mining, proof of stake, proof of work. Stand up, explain it, and if you're going to go also propose banning it, which is what Yellen's been the side of, or highly regulating it. So I think like stance to take is just like, don't touch it.
Yeah.
Let us own it. Let us innovate. Let us create. Let us, like, compete, or we'll leave and we'll go start a company somewhere else. Like, the world is way too, like, there's so much talent everywhere, all over the world. And like, I know that the US is the best country in the world, in my opinion. And we have, I think, unbelievable amount of rights and freedoms, that a lot of countries don't have. But you take those away from us, and the US becomes a way less attractive place to go build. And as soon as we lose that on the world stage, of the US being the greatest place to live, the greatest place to build, the greatest place to innovate, you start to change that mindset. Like, I grew up knowing that I could do anything I wanted. I could build anything, do anything. That was always my mindset. Nobody ever told me I couldn't, dream something, I couldn't build something. And that's where I'm at today. Like, I still, I look at the world being like, okay, well, there's no better place to build than the US. Like, sure, I might get, taxed a little bit more here than other places, but like I said, I don't mind paying taxes. I can vote for politicians that, are for the better use of taxes. I can build companies and encourage, invest in companies, and that are going to, create more competitive services to the government, that are going to, sort of lean on the side of, like, private sector can do more and do better. But like, I have no right now. I have no incentive to build anywhere else, unless the government sort of takes a different
Yeah.
stance and makes me build
Yeah.
somewhere else.
Yeah. It makes it really uncomfortable. I mean, it's also the reality is that it's a big deal to move to a new country. If you're born and raised in a like, especially America just is, we can't just drive a couple hours and be in another country like you can in Europe. If France or
Right.
Germany or Switzerland, like, it's a lot more cohesive together over there. It's like you can move to Puerto Rico. I have a bunch of friends. I'm sure you know people who would move to Puerto Rico. That seems to be quite trendy for crypto people, but it's still a inconvenience. And I think I'm much more a proponent of probably how you are, which is like, let's talk about the problems openly. Let's invite the people who make decisions, pressure them to. I'm a big proponent of having conversations, probably because I'm doing this podcast, but also because I believe that when you are willing to have a long form conversation, you're implicitly uh, presenting the idea that I don't necessarily have all the answers, and I'm willing to engage and use the back and forth to come to uh, a better understanding of how we should collectively act from incorporating your viewpoint. If there's anything that I think we're doing not enough of collectively, it's engaging with people who disagree with us with the intent to understand why they disagree, as opposed to just writing people off as being dumb or greedy or selfish or whatever the antagonistic word is. So yeah, yeah,
I totally agree. I think that's like one of my biggest observations. It's like, I think that it's important to look at the world, look at problems with a kaleidoscopic view. It's like, look at it from different angles. Like, why do conservatives look at something one way? Why do liberals look at it from another way? And understand and listen. And I think that's going to bring us together. And I don't think my views fit in one category. And a lot of that is because I try to err on the side of listening to both sides. And there's great ideas from both sides. And it kind of sucks that we have to, like, look at it as like the country's divided, or whatever, because it's like, we should all have individual thoughts, we should all have individual ideas. And yeah, like, unfortunately, we kind of have to, we can't always vote for, like, just our individual ideas. It's not a pure democracy or anything like that. Like, we have to kind of vote for the candidate that represents us most. And a lot of those times, in a two-party system, you kind of have to choose sides of, are you liberal, are you Republican? But it's like, or are you Democrat, are you Republican? But in reality, we should have, like, in an ideal world, we would be self-sovereign. We would have our own ideas, and our own thoughts, and we would come to those through listening. And I think that would be a better world. But
yeah.
not everyone thinks like that. But
Well,
hopefully
yeah,
we're on a path to thinking more like that. And it sounds like that's kind of how you think. And hopefully, if there's anything from this podcast, not just like earning free Bitcoin, also like thinking more kaleidoscopically, in most problems with the world.
yeah, yeah. I think it's, to me, it comes down to being being curious, because
Yeah.
curious carries with it open-mindedness, and it carries with it a willingness to give away ideas. Like I come at you and I'm like, Alex, you know what, this is what I believe, and I throw it at you and you're like, well, I think you're wrong in this area, and it's like, look, prove me wrong. I would love it, right? Prove me wrong on something, can throw out a more convincing argument. Maybe you've seen a lot of different stuff in the world than I have, and that would be amazing if I could walk away with a new idea that I was convinced of that's better. And I think a lot of people are, media certainly is, the tradition of media has a lot of momentum. And as people starts to view independent thinkers on social media, they're more compelling. And I think that that is a trend that will continue to grow, especially in our generation, where it's like, why give attention to people on mass media? It's not, attention is the currency of the world, and that attention is quickly dissolving from centralized systems to more distributed. I'm giving it to many different people, and that's ultimately a really good thing, because it ultimately, it's more engaging. You can feel, you like you were saying earlier, you grew up feeling like you could build anything. Well, that carries with it the understanding that you have enough capability, potential to understand the world, to do enough, as opposed to like, well, this is just the way it is. It's like, this system is in place and you're not going to be able to change it. It's like, you can go and talk to people. I mean, the awesome thing about this country is you can really go and pressure politicians and talk to them about ways, like educating people is a really powerful thing. On Lolli,
Yeah,
I want to touch on
absolutely.
it. I want to touch on Lolli a little bit more. The Let's go in the future. So today, right now, you have relationships. I assume they're contract relationships with merchants, where you're integrating to their payment processor, whatever they're using. So you recognize when someone makes a transaction, and then you have the contact information of the customer, and you can send a deposit to a wallet that the customer has on file. And then you're charging, probably in multiple different payment methods, but somehow you're charging the merchants on some periodic basis, like maybe a 30-day net 30 or something. Is that roughly how the business logic is structured?
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah,
Yeah.
the simple way of looking at it is like merchants pay us when our users shop their sites. It's like incentive
Mhm.
marketing. Yeah,
And,
they're merchants are always looking for to compete against Amazon and to get more users. We've created a tool that gives people an incentive to shop at our merchants as opposed to other merchants. So if Nike wants more customers, they're going to have a higher percentage back, and they, in many cases, like in the first year, they didn't care about Bitcoin. They were just like, okay, if you're bringing us customers, we'll keep giving you more money and stuff like that. Now, and what was cool about that is it was sort of a Trojan horse. Like, people have been
mm,
talking about, if you read the original Bitcoin white paper, it was a P2P payment system, right? And now, Bitcoin is very much like the greatest store of value, and this incredible digital currency, this digital store of value. But in order to get to this like eventual, hyper Bitcoinization state, you have to kind of get creative with how you distribute it to people and how you introduce it to people. So we were able to use cash back as a way to not just do the obvious, which is give Bitcoin back to consumers, but also get thousands of merchants on board that had never even touched crypto. I think even
mm,
today, there's like literally, I think five merchants out of our 1,000 plus that actually accept crypto.
mm,
So they're all doing Bitcoin back, but many of them, we're their only crypto company that they work with. So we're not just on the forefront of consumer adoption, making it incredibly easy. We're also on the forefront of merchant adoption to get merchants into crypto, to get them comfortable with Bitcoin. And I think that's an incredibly important thing, because if you look at like activity, if you look at rituals, if you look at making crypto a part of everyday life, it's you can't just do the consumer. Like, the amount of times that I move money to my friends is about once a week, once a month. If I like, if we split dinner, or if we go on a trip, or if there's like a bachelor party or whatever it is, like it's like once a month, right? Maybe once every couple of weeks if you're doing dinner and splitting, and for whatever reason. So now it's like, the amount of times I use my card, or the amount of times I go to merchants or spend money, it's like 4 or 5 times a day. So the amount of
mm.
touch points that you can actually make crypto be a part of everyday life is way greater than
Mm.
if you're actually going to to just do a P2P system.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so yeah, more touch points for a consumer, more touch points for a merchant, and ultimately all sides win.
Yeah. Yeah. I think kind of how you're underscoring a major aspect to widespread adoption is culture and it's people's understanding of how often they see it. Like if most people don't interact with the ACH system to know how terrible it is. But if you're in
Right.
business and you send ACH transfers, you're like, oh my God, this thing takes, 5, 6 days. It doesn't work on weekends and holidays. But you have to interact with it to appreciate how bad it is. And on the flip side,
Yeah.
like what you're doing is you're like, hey, all the consumers of the world, even all the merchants of the world, the people in business behind the scenes, let's just get you some exposure to this. It doesn't have to be the primary pipes through which you're paying for something, but even if it's like a 1%, 2% cash back, it's significant, not even just in the volume of money, but in the mental impact that it's making. It's like, oh, I have a Bitcoin wallet. I know how to move it. It's like it takes probably, I'm sure the first time you move Bitcoin, you're like, you check that code 15 times and you're like reading all the terms of service. It takes probably a good 15 transactions transfers on crypto till you're comfortable and you understand the different aspects of it. So getting people very comfortable with it is hugely underrated. Aside from just the volume and growth there.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's you. I think the easiest way to understand Bitcoin is to understand like just to do it. Like move
Yeah.
money, move it once, and you start to get like how powerful it is. You're like, wait a second, nobody, no, I didn't need any sign off. I didn't need to run it through like
Yeah.
any other permission. It's like permissionless money, and you send it to yourself, send it to a friend,
Yeah.
like get it sent to you. It's like you have to use it to really understand how powerful it is. And as soon as you do, it just blows your mind. Like that's what I think it's like when I talk about like breaking the fiat mindset, like breaking this idea that you like need other institutions to move money around. Like my money
Hmm.
should be mine. I'm an individual. I'm not like, like I should be able to own my money and own my assets and I should be able to move it to you when I owe you money. It's like we
Yeah.
should be, err on the side of self sovereignty, because we are individuals, and there are wonderful things that come from a collective, a tribe, that where we can pool resources and help each other. But then there's plenty of things where it's like, no, I should truly own my own money and move money, and you don't really understand that until you use Bitcoin, and you're like, wait a second,
Hmm.
what's happening with my bank? What's happening with ACH? Like, how does this all work? Like,
Mm.
Bitcoin makes you question money, and I think that's a really good thing.
Last thing I want to ask you about is the credit cards. So, Visa, Mastercard, Amex, maybe Discover. I don't know how big they are now, but the first few are major institutions. They've been around for a while. They're massive companies. They seem to just be ever present. Do you view Lolli overtly as a competitive threat? Maybe in the short term, it's complementary, but is there a way that maybe it's not Lolli, but do you see a world where we're just beyond credit cards and they're not functional, or maybe they're displaced on blockchain with new, more innovative companies, or maybe Mastercard, Visa open up blockchain departments and really take it on board and completely change their model. What's your view on credit for individuals and credit cards?
Um, trying to think how much
Because wait, let me
understand
add one
people's.
more thing to that. It's like, do you agree with the idea that credit cards paved the way for this cashback mindset, where you're using credit, and part of that is the companies are benefiting from that, so they're sharing in the returns, um, and so people come to expect, you get 2% back on Chase or Sapphire card or whatever it is, and so that's kind of the default expectation.
Yeah, they're the rails of credit cards, the rails of debit cards, of like had to have been set for us to possibly understand these things like QR code payments and digital payments. So we're going into a world where it's like cards set up the frameworks, set up the network effects of payments, and let us like really have like, I mean, people can spend more and better and more efficiently. It's easier, than having to carry around like gold, right, or coins or cash. It's like it's way easier to just have a card. You go swipe it everywhere. The thing that's coming is now we have our phones that we can go move money anywhere, and so that's just becoming all seamless and all running into one. So I think the networks are incredibly important for distribution and adoption. But I think the defensibility is actually around the loyalty networks, and we are able to build our own network, our own loyalty network, but there's strong arguments to be made that we can actually partner with different networks that have existing loyalty networks and existing network effects that can increase the adoption of crypto through that. So yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword where, in many ways, the networks will help adoption of crypto, but then there's so many archaic pieces about the network. So interchange is an archaic idea, right? Like, been around for what, 30 years or so, and hasn't changed. And some merchants love it, some merchants hate it, but effectively, it helps some merchants. It really hurts other merchants. And so people should be able to choose, is my point of view. So we're trying to build a business where people can choose what they pay. Like, merchants can choose what they pay. They can choose not to work with Lolli, or they can choose to pay 1%, rewards, or they can pay 10% rewards. So it should be on a variable scale. People shouldn't be forced to pay something. It
Hmm.
should just be saying, like, hey, do you want an incentive for, to attract a Lolli customer? So some of our merchants have very low rates, and some of our merchants have extremely high rates because they have a higher propensity and or value that they're assigning to our customer and other customers. So yeah, I think it's like,
Hmm.
I would say the credit card companies are both good and bad at the same time, and the parts that are bad will be destroyed by more innovative companies and ideas and crypto, and they will make a choice to adopt it or not. So Visa and Mastercard have both started. This is very public. They've started crypto sides of both of their organizations, and had no, they know that they're going to get left behind if they don't adopt it in some form or fashion. But their business models around, like, interchange is going to just dramatically change. It has to.
Hmm.
And are consumers interested and willing to pay predatory rates that a lot of them are required to take? And I don't know if those are sustainable. I don't know if it's sustainable to charge 25% APY on a consumer. It's seemingly like that's becoming increasingly more unpopular for people to want to have those high rates and be subjected to that, especially when people aren't carrying balances. So it's like the people that are not paying the not using their credit card as a debit card, and carrying that balance. They're not really that interested in paying like 20% rates, but they're making the business model work for everybody. So I think eventually, like,
Hmm.
people on someone will replicate credit systems where you can build credit on chain, and your wallet will be will have your credit rating. So like, if I build up this wallet and I have this public address, my wallet should have some sort of rating system based on my assets that I have under management. So it'd be like this, like, live credit rating, where it's like, I have these NFTs, or I have this amount of Bitcoin, or I have this amount of ETH, or whatever it is, and then I have a certain credit rating assigned to my wallet. And so I can stake to have some sort of balance, and then I can earn rewards on that staking. I can earn rewards on that balance and on that history. So yeah, I think there's a lot. It's like day one, or
Yeah.
super early days, but I think you can almost believe that anything that is centralized could be hypothetically decentralized, or a smart contract in a long enough time frame could be built on top of most what I call dumb contracts that we sign with these centralized institutions. So eventually we'll get there. It's just a matter of time before the decentralized world overtakes the centralized world. It's inevitable.
Yeah. What a world that would be. That
Yeah.
it's kind of, you really think about it. It's dramatically different in so many ways. Alex, man, really enjoyed talking to you today. Is there anything that's top of mind for you recently that you're looking for? Whether it's you guys raised, how much did you guys raise total so far from investors?
We raised 20 million total. We raised 15 over the last few months.
Hmm. And so you're done raising. You
Hmm.
are looking, I'd imagine, always for new merchants and customers. Is there one that you internally prioritize over the others? Is it like, or are they kind
Both.
of equally, yeah,
Yeah,
valuable?
it's a chicken or egg, and it's
Yeah.
also like one. It's a chicken or egg. It started as a chicken or egg. It's now a flywheel effect. So we get more merchants, we get more consumers, we get more consumers. They earn more. The merchants make more. So it's this like beautiful flywheel of
Hmm.
a business where the more merchants we have, the more consumers we get. The more consumers we get, the higher rates we get. So it's like a yeah. We're just on that flywheel. So always looking for more consumers. So everybody share. Use Lolli, share it with their friends, and then merchants always looking for new merchants that want to offer Bitcoin back. So yeah, I would say like all those things. So it's been a really
Cool.
fun company to start with great people and yeah,
Yeah, it sounds like you guys have
excited to
a
keep growing.
great team too. Congrats on all the
We
progress,
do.
man.
Very
We'll have
lucky.
to have you back on one day when you have a new exciting announcement.
Yeah, so we should have we just launched the mobile app, and in about a month we have a very massive feature coming out that's going to
Oh,
give people a lot more rewards. I'll say that on everyday purchases. So
oh,
yeah, tune in like a month, and
wait, is
we'll
this
be yeah,
like
download the app today.
a new merchant you're announcing, or a new feature in the app?
A big product, big product.
Ooh, ooh, I'm
Yeah.
stoked.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. People are gonna be able to earn a lot more, and I think people are gonna be pretty happy. So
Free
yeah,
money.
check us out. It should be like mid October, 2021. So yeah,
Nice.
check us out and be able to earn a lot more.
All right, man. Well, I'm a big fan. So congrats on all the stuff and keep cranking.
Yeah, awesome.
All right,
Take
take
care, Mike.
care.